a few years, not long ago, basketball, the NBA was more about getting a whole bunch of stars to play together.
That's true.
Now, the NBA is looking more and more like college football. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Nick Morgasen. This is another edition of Moving the Goalpost. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart, Nick at Morgasen Radio. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network across social media at ETB Network. You can follow you can follow Moving the Goalpost, this show, at MTGP ETB across social media. And make sure to like and subscribe. And you can watch all Empty the Bench shows on youtube.com/ETB Network and listen to all Empty the Bench shows on ETBpodcast.com. And make sure to like and subscribe. And you can listen to this show wherever you get your podcasts. And this podcast is presented by Playback. Stay tuned for later in the show to find out more. All right. So Oklahoma City wins the finals. Here we are. I feel like it's a strange day because the biggest story is not the team that wins the finals. The bigger story, if anything, is the team that lost the finals. The biggest story, like this is a weird sort of finals because like what we're used to seeing is there being talk about the winners. Usually what happens, this is more talk about the losers or why the winning team didn't deserve it or didn't play well or why the NBA is losing. It's like this finals is all about losers. It's like how in the 2016 finals, a lot of it was about the Warriors blowing the 3-1 lead, but at least then it was a little bit of both. This finals is all just about the negativity. It seems like the storylines are just about the negativity.
Yeah. So first of all, I don't think anyone saw this series going 7 games. I'll say that right off the bat. Anyone who had 7 games on the bingo card of this series is a liar, number one.
Yeah.
The Pacers played way better in this series than anybody anticipated also.
Yeah.
Obviously, the main storyline for Game 7 is going to be that Halliburton, and now we can say this because it's officially out there. Shams put it out there that he officially tore his Achilles.
Yeah.
And so he's going to be gone all of next year, like Tatum and Dame Lillard also. That's 3 stars. By the way, all number 0.
Yeah, and they all happen to wear number 0, which everybody's talking about. They all also happen to play in the East.
No, Dame plays in the West. Oh, I'm making a mistake. Yes, because I'm still thinking Trailblazers.
He had his whole career on the West, but now he's in. So all of these very significant injuries are in the East. So now the East is even more watered down than it was before.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I'm waiting for you to say, oh, because Halliburton and Tatum are out, the Knicks have a chance to compete next year.
I would say the Knicks have a much better chance to compete next year or make it back to the Eastern Conference Finals with no Halliburton and no Tatum. And we don't know what's going to happen with this Boston team. So I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. We don't really know how good the Cavs are outside of the regular season. We don't know how good anybody is. And by the way, you know what team really can make a run now is Orlando.
I like Orlando. I think Orlando's a good team.
Any one of these teams can make a run, and there's a strong possibility that Indiana doesn't go back to the finals with this squad.
I said that after the end of the stream that I wouldn't be surprised if that was the Pacers' only chance or attempt for a long while to win a title, and I was very surprised after the Halliburton injury that they had a 1-point lead at the half. That was probably the most shocking part of that game so far. You're going to get mad at me, but I'm going to say it anyway. The officiating sucked again in this game. It's been like that all series. The
whole playoffs, the officiating has not been great.
They don't call a single foul on Shai, which frustrates me big time. That the amount of elbows and the amount of push-offs that he gives, they just don't call. And he probably could have fell out of that game 2 or 3 times on calls that they don't make. But they won. Give them credit. J-Dub in this series, I think, was a big reason why they won this series, even though Shai had an amazing series, won the NBA Finals MVP.
I wouldn't say he had an amazing series. He was the best. The weird thing about this series is that Oklahoma City had a pretty shaky series. They didn't play great every game. And I guess that's kind of normal. I think it's one of those things where people are not going to remember that. They're just going to remember that they won. I mean, like 10 years ago when the Warriors beat the Cavs, everybody forgets that Steph Curry had a terrible series. That's why Iguodala got the one MVP, because it was just a process of elimination.
That's why I don't like the whole process when they say, well, it's got to be a star that wins the NBA Finals MVP. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't. No. It has to be the best player in the series who won, as long as it's on the winning team.
The best player on the winning team is how it is.
What is there? There's 2 or 3 rarities where someone on the other team won it.
The last time that happened was, I think, in 1969, and it was Jerry West.
Okay, so it's rare. It's few and far in between.
No,
but
it hasn't happened in 56 years. So
yeah, so
they would never do that now.
But you know what? Chalk it up to them. They played better. Their offense was too much for the Pacers. The defense kind of fell apart. They played well in the first half, the Pacer defense. And I said, oh, there's a chance. Even because I said, are they going to use the Halliburton injury as fuel to kind of play through it? But we all had the assumption in the second half that the Oklahoma City offense was just going to take off and roll. And that's eventually what they did. And there was just way too much to come back from. And when you have a duo like Shai and J-Dub, and you have Chet, who finally decided to play well in the last couple of games.
Disappeared for much of this series.
I mean, if he played like he normally would have played, this wouldn't have been a series at all, in my opinion.
Well, if he had played as well as he did in Game 7, the whole series, it would have looked a lot different.
They probably would have lost this in 5 games if Chet was playing the way he was all series. But chalk it up to the Pacers. They've done it all playoffs. They come back when they're not supposed to. They win games they were not supposed to. They went up 2-0 on Cleveland in that series and won that series. But I will say that Cleveland had its own injuries that they were dealing with, and that's why they lost that series. So,
I mean, look, injuries are just a part of the game. It just happens.
I mean, the crazier stat I saw during the game on Twitter, there was a lot of crazy stats, but this season alone, there was 10 torn Achilles injuries that happened during the NBA season, most in NBA history since the merger ABA-NBA.
So, the most throughout the whole regular and postseason.
Yes.
So what's the second most?
5.
So that's double the second most.
Yes.
That is a lot.
5 was the original most. This year they broke it. Now, technically they're only counting it as 8 because 2 of them were in the offseason and one of them was one of the big draftees that's getting ready to get drafted. He had a hamstring tear or Achilles tear. I don't remember who it was, but they're counting it technically as 8, but 10. So that's a lot. It's a lot.
Do you think there could be a reason for that, or do you think it's just a coincidence?
I think they baby some of the players a
little
bit.
Have to do with tearing Achilles, though.
That they're load managing the crap out of these players, and then when they need them most, then.
But they've been doing that. For a long time. Why would it be substantially worse this season? It hasn't gotten any worse this year than it was 2-3 years ago.
I would also say Dame's an older player, so I can't chalk that one up to anything.
He's not that old. I mean, he's 35. I mean, he's a little older. He's not that old.
He's on the other side for technically an NBA career.
Yeah, but he's not that old. Like LeBron, somebody like LeBron is way older than Dame.
True. I mean, and when I was doing a stream talking about other stuff, which we're going to talk about later, people say, "Oh, well, there's a theory out there. LeBron is not in good shape and he just takes steroids." And I'm like, are we really going to go conspiracy theory here?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. The whole HGH thing.
They say it about Brady too. Brady took steroids. Both of those guys spend $1 million a year to keep their bodies in shape.
Right, and it's a similar thing with Novak Djokovic.
He was a phenomenon for a long time. Nadal too, before he had all his injuries.
Yeah, but Nadal's career fell off a lot quicker than Djokovic's career. way quicker. I mean, Nadal's only a year older than Djokovic. He's already retired now.
Well, Nadal had the leg issues from all the running because that's what his game was. That wasn't Novak's game as much.
Well, right. And I think that LeBron and Brady are both a lot smarter about their bodies and how they treat them. Like, I think they're just much smarter in that sense, where you look at somebody like Kobe or Jordan, like their careers flamed out way faster than somebody like LeBron's.
Well, and it's like I said earlier in the stream also that Kobe only knew one way of playing, and that was, excuse me, 1,000%. Even when he was hurt, he played 1,000%. All the way to the last game. Now, people criticize the last game because he scored 60 points because he was getting all the shots. Yeah. But still, that's hard to do, even on an injured...
Well, he wouldn't have done that. He wouldn't have taken that many shots if it wasn't his last game.
No, I agree. But I'm saying that's all he knows is to take shots and play. You don't see that anymore in today's athlete culture, whether it's the NBA, Major League Baseball, NFL, whatever you want to say. They do less. Yeah.
On some level, they do less. Although baseball players hit way more home runs than they used to. Pitchers throw faster, so they shoot more threes.
That bothered me with the Pacers too. Like, they stopped doing what made them a really good team, which was track meeting everybody. Which like that, it didn't make sense what they were doing in the finals. Like, at one point, they just gave up and just said, "Oh, we're going to go into the half court set. We're going to shoot threes." There were quite a few times in Game 7 where they had a direct line to the hoop and they just shot a three. Now, you can thank Steph Curry for that because that's where the game went. But
you know what? They didn't. Just because Steph Curry does it doesn't mean the Pacers had to do it too. But I will push back on that for a second. The Pacers pulling up and hitting a lot of threes sort of is a track meet type of thing, more than driving to the basket is.
No, but I'm saying catching off guard in transition off like a make or a rebound.
Yeah.
That's what they did best.
They did that against the Knicks quite a lot, and it worked. So.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, the Knicks were caught off guard running back because they just were not. That worked for them the most. But they went away from it. It killed them in the long run.
But the thing with Oklahoma City, though, is that like you were talking about how their offense was too much. I also think their defense was too much for them.
They were the first team in quite a long time to be a top 3 offense and a top 3 defense in the same season.
Exactly. So I mean, like, it's hard to even just get to the basket, to drive to the basket, and even when it's probably why they were taking a lot of threes. And even when you get to the basket, you have Hartenstein or you have Chet Holmgren there, and it's just substantially harder to finish at the rim. You can't say the same thing when you play a team like the Knicks, where Mitchell Robinson only plays like 20 minutes a game. And if Towns is playing at the 5, he's not that good of a defender, as we all know.
Well, it also didn't help that TJ McConnell, who had to step in and play the rest of the game, so to speak, and was driving into a double team or a triple team in front of the basket and losing the ball multiple times. First of all, he's going to get paid. I just think he's going to make bank because of how well he played in this playoffs.
And the thing is, he didn't play a lot. He didn't play a lot in the playoffs until Game 7. But when he did play, he just like went off.
He's the human spark plug.
Well, it reminds me of remember a few years ago, I think it was Zach Wilson got hurt, and the Jets put in Chris Streveler.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And and he had like an amazing game where it's like, remember the time when the Jets put in Greg McElroy and he was amazing? And It's like, I think that happens sometimes in sports where you put in a new guy and the defense doesn't know what to do with them. That's what I think happened with TJ McConnell.
That's the old baseball adage when you can't scout somebody, so you play better. You can't figure them out whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, that was when the Yankees had this historically bad track record against lefties. So they would. Yeah. So teams would throw out like a no-name lefty that they have no scouting report on, and the Yankees would almost get no hit because they had no idea how to hit. Like, same thing. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and that seems to have been what happened. I guess the story, though, is that, like, even though Oklahoma City did not have that good of a series, I mean, I guess it does say a lot about them, which is that a team that, like, if you don't play that well, you can still win. And you can still win the finals. So,
I mean, it was also the first time, what was it, in NBA history that Shai won the NBA Finals MVP, led the league in scoring. What was the other one? I can't remember. It was 3 of them. But
and won regular season MVP.
Yes, that's it. So it's an incredible feat, number one, because that's hard to do in one full season.
Yeah.
And what was the other? Oh, they had 84 combined wins. I think it was tied with one of the Jordan teams for third all time for most amount of wins combined. So it was an incredible year for OKC. And OKC, by the way, is pretty much set for life when it comes to draft capital. I don't know if you saw the amount of draft capital, the amount of first round picks they have.
Yeah.
And some of them are protected also.
Which you don't normally see, which you almost never see from even just playoff teams, let alone the winner of the championship.
But Sam Presti just said, all right, I'll trade for all the first round picks. I'll do what I got to do. They have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to first round picks. So say they can't afford like J-Dub and Shai and Chet Holmgren and all those guys. They'll just go trade some of those first round picks and they'll go get another big three.
Well, the problem with that is you're starting over. And I don't know. I think that there's a whole lot of talk about, like, I remember people used to talk about super teams in the NBA, and people talked about how horrible super teams were.
The big three. Yeah.
Like, super teams were just so terrible. And now I think most of us are sitting here like we kind of miss the super teams a little bit.
Well, it can't be done anymore because of the apron system and the amount of money.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's the problem with the new system they put in place 2 years ago. I honestly don't like this new system in the NBA where teams can't stack up rosters. I like the idea of a Warriors Cavs type of rivalry.
You really want to see that 4 in a row though?
No, not necessarily. I mean, well, part of the reason was because it got to the point where it wasn't a fair fight, and it wasn't because teams were allowed to just stack their rosters. It had much more to do with things like injuries and Kyrie leaving the Cavs, and then the Cavs really just and the East being very bad, and it had much more to do with that than it did with the whole concept of super teams. I don't take issue with super teams. I want there to be a lot of them is the issue. I don't want there to be like one of them or two of them. I want there to be as many of them.
The big thing that Adam Silver was going for was parity in the league.
But do people like parity as much as people say they do?
I think they do because you don't want to see the same team winning 5 times in a row. It doesn't look good for the league.
No, but when has that ever happened, though, when the same team wins 5 times in a row? That never happens, even with the super team era.
That was more of an exaggeration. But my point was...
But that hasn't happened. Like, it was only like the Warriors only won 2 years in a row.
Right, but I'm saying people were getting tired of that. Like, just because that they were just beating everybody. Like,
were people really that tired of it? Like, we look back at... Well, I think that, like I said before, I think that that's a very in-the-moment thing. You know what I mean?
One thing I will say is that Joe Lacob, the ownership of the Warriors, way overpaid the luxury. So that was his choice to make that big 3.
That's true.
Less teams now are willing to sacrifice because it costs more per dollar. Now, if you go over that second apron, I think it's like a 25% penalty on top for whatever you pay, which is a lot of money, by the way, with all these contracts. So more teams are less incentivized to go over that because of the penalties that are involved with building these big rosters. And we're going to talk about one next, which is going to cost a lot of money.
Well, it's going to cost Oklahoma City a lot of money. They're not going to be able to keep this team together. I mean, they have a couple of years for now because the team is still young, but Chet Holmgren and J-Dub are both on their rookie contracts. That's not going to last forever. They only have a couple more years.
Well, that's what I wanted to look up. I have the payroll actually in front of me.
They had extensions, so they're not paid exactly as much as they were paid when they were rookies, but they're still on their rookie deals.
So Shai's going to make $38 million next year, which is actually on the lower side for a star, believe it or not.
For an MVP, for sure.
The Hardenstein contract is an albatross. The amount they paid, he's owed $28.5 million next year, which is insane. Dort is only making 17.
And that's going to go way up. He just won a championship. So you're going to have to pay Dort, Holmgren, and J-Dub way more than you're paying them now. That's 3 guys, and you're starting 5.
Well, Shai, Hartenstein, and Dort are under contract for another 2 years. So they don't have to worry about that yet. Chet Holmgren is actually up after next year. So he's
how about J-Dub?
So Where is J-Dub's contract? I don't even see that on here. I'll have to look that up. Oh, here it is. Jalen Williams. So he made this is ridiculous when I tell you
Make
what this
sure you have the right Jalen Williams.
Well, yeah,
There's
it's on
just
the.
two.
I'm looking at the OKC payroll.
No, I'm saying there's 2 Jalen Williamses on the roster.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
They're only listing one, at least from what I'm seeing. So, unless this number is wrong, it says in 2024-25 he made 4.75.
That's probably J-Dub.
Yeah, so he made under $5 million.
Are you looking at the Hoops Hype? Is that what you're looking at?
I'm looking at Basketball Reference.
Okay, Jalen Williams. Yeah, 4.75.
That's
million.
insane. That is insane.
Yeah,
And he's owed $6.5 million next year.
and that's going to go. But the point I'm making is that they're basically getting all of this at a very low price for now, and it's all going to cost them a lot more money. They're not going to be able to keep the starting 5 together.
I mean, one guy that they can keep, even though he's going to be a little expensive, probably. Alex Caruso was an amazing trade. I mean, getting him from Chicago, and by the way, Josh Giddey's probably kicking himself right now in Chicago when he's not doing inappropriate things off the court. He's got to be the most sour one right now, right?
You
What?
think? Oh, because he got traded from the championship roster.
For Alex Caruso. Alex Caruso actually was a big deal in this series.
Yeah, he was.
And he's making so he made a little under 10 million this year. He's going to make 18 next year. That still, I think, is pretty on the low side, pretty much. So their roster is pretty much set for the next 2-ish years. So they're not going to have an issue until like 27, 28. Because Shai's deal is up 26, 27 after that season.
Okay, so in 2 years, they're going to have an issue.
And by the way, so he's going to make 38 next year, and he's going to make 40 next year. That's still on the low side-ish.
For a guy of his caliber, absolutely.
So they're only paying him $78 million combined in 2 years.
Yeah.
So that they're going to get a steal if they win another title, by the way. So they're fine. And they have plenty of first-round picks. So
all right, they're fine for now. I guess the one saving grace is they have a bunch of first-round picks. But the point I'm making is that in a couple of years, they're going to run into this problem.
yes, because all contracts usually come up around the same time. So that's when the issue is going to happen. So Shai signed a 5-year, $179 million extension in August of 2021. Think about that.
Yeah. But you know what? Actually, you're talking about how Giddey is probably the most bitter. You know who's got to be, the biggest loser of this series is not the Pacers. It's the Clippers.
That's a good point. You're talking about
They're
the trade.
biggest losers of this.
Talking about the Paul George trade.
Yeah, which is almost like the Deshaun Watson trade of basketball.
That's
almost not quite that bad, but
I mean, when I look back at that trade, the amount of first-round picks that the Clippers traded.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was like a Billy King type of deal.
Yeah. And the 2022 Clippers pick was J-Dub.
Yeah.
So they're probably kicking themselves. Not that anyone knew he was going to be this type of player. But
nobody knew. He played at Santa Clara.
Yeah, but they gave the amount of capital that they gave up for Paul George was
they could have had this roster basically.
Yeah. That's a good point.
They could have had their 2 best players on the roster.
And the Clippers are going through hell again now. So,
but you know what though? It's not like they're a bad team. They're still a very good team.
No, they're not a bad team. But I just don't ever see them getting over the hump, which they never do.
No, and who knows what would have happened had those 2 guys just stayed on the Clippers.
It's my favorite terminology of all time: fallacy of a predetermined outcome.
Right, you don't know what would have happened.
Because what happens if J-Dub was horrible with the Clippers if they drafted it?
Yeah, we don't know.
So nobody knows.
Although, like you were talking about, like the new CBA and everything, and I just think it's bad for the sport. Honestly, I think this CBA is just not good for the sport. I think that basketball is the NBA of all the leagues is just, I don't know how I would put it, but like very star driven.
Well, that's a lot of sports, though.
But basketball is the most star driven, and the stars are the ones who make the stories. Like the storylines in basketball, it's not like football where the storylines are about the teams. In basketball, the storyline is more about the players. It's more about LeBron. It's about Curry. It's about Durant. It's about certain players individually more than it is about the franchise.
Yeah, but I would say that's actually better because look at Major League Baseball. They don't promote any of their stars whatsoever. And they're having an issue. They're struggling to keep audience because of it. They weren't willing to promote Shohei at all when he entered the league.
But that proves my point, though.
No, but I'm saying the NBA was more willing to get behind the stars.
Right.
I'm saying,
and that's my whole point. The NBA is a star-driven league. In baseball, it's like it's not as. You're right. Baseball, I guess you could say, doesn't promote their stars as much, though they're very lucky that they have guys like Judge and Ohtani playing in the same era.
Yeah, I would say that's a big deal because Judge is willing to go out there and do whatever it takes for baseball. It reminds me, and this is going to be a very insane comparison, but Pete Rose, who cared about the game of baseball. Like he loves baseball. That was his thing. If you look at Aaron Judge, I see the same thing. Like he loves baseball. Like he will go out there and promote for the sake of the sport. Mike Trout, even though he can't stay healthy, will promote for the love of the sport. Bryce Harper, even though he can be a jackass from time to time, can really go out there and promote for the game of the sport. We don't see that enough.
Yeah. Well, you're saying we don't see that enough in basketball.
Right. But the NBA does a good job of promoting the players, even though sometimes they don't do it on their own. How many freaking promos do we see on ESPN and ABC? Make sure you tune in tonight as Kevin Durant and blah, blah, blah takes on Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. How many freaking commercials do we see? The NBA does a good job of it.
I think in baseball, that's more of a local thing.
Well,
where they promote stars individually. I at least from what I remember, like I remember growing up, we would see like on the Yes Network things like Derek Jeter in the Yankees and the Subway Series versus David Wright in the Mets or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the difference also is that, like you just said, baseball is still kind of falling back into the localized scepter a little bit too much. And the NBA is focused on national and growing the brand. Like baseball is still trying to deal with the affiliates and what's the word I'm looking for? The localized channels, which is why they're struggling.
Baseball is just a more local sport, but I don't agree. I wouldn't say baseball's struggling right now. Baseball is doing very well. I mean, the best teams are in New York and LA and Philly.
No, I get that, but people still don't want to watch baseball though. That's the biggest problem.
But like the thing is, that's just not true. Like people do watch baseball. They just don't watch it the way they watch football.
The biggest problem I had was going back to this series was people say, "Oh, we're not going to watch it because it's OKC versus the Pacers." What are you talking about? It's the NBA Finals. You're going to watch.
Although not as many people watched, I guess you could, like, it was a fairly low-rated finals, but people often blame it on the small markets. And by the way, many of the people who say that are also like to criticize the NBA for their product not being good. Look,
yes,
if that's the case, if the argument is that it's just small markets, there's nothing the NBA can do about that anyway. I mean, that's completely out of their control if two small market teams just happen to make it to the finals.
Unless they're just freaking handpicking every NBA finals.
Right, which, in fairness, some people do probably believe. Some people probably do believe the whole thing is rigged. But the proof that the NBA isn't rigged is that the Pacers and Thunder would not be in the finals if it was rigged.
By the way, the Oklahoma City Thunder is the smallest market in NBA history to win an NBA Finals. By the way.
Is it the smallest market in the entire NBA? It's got to be up there. What's a smaller market?
Maybe that in Charlotte, maybe.
Oklahoma City's got to be a smaller market than Charlotte.
Well, I'm just saying, I think those are the two smaller markets, but I would probably say Oklahoma City's probably the smallest.
How about Utah?
No, I would say Utah's probably a little bigger than Oklahoma City.
Okay.
There's been some legends in Utah before.
I mean, in my mind, outside, well, that doesn't mean it's a big market, though.
Well, no, I'm just saying that helps it. I mean, like OKC had some names, but then they went a long time without.
Like Indiana's a small market too, and they've had some legendary.
Go ask Miles Turner, who had to go fight for his market on Sports Center.
Yeah. So I mean, but in the sense of but I don't think it's so much about the small market. I think it's more about the individuals involved. I mean, Cleveland's a small market, and they got crazy TV ratings when they were in the finals because it was LeBron.
But I would say Cleveland is definitely a bigger market than OKC by far.
I mean, Oklahoma City doesn't have any other professional teams. That city has all they have is basketball. They don't have a baseball or a football team.
Right. I get that, but Cleveland will always be bigger. That's not even a question. Oklahoma City had an uphill battle.
But the point I'm making is that I don't think it's about the small market cities exactly as much as it's the fact that it has to do with the marketability of their stars. Shea is a great player. Arguably, he's the MVP, arguably the best player in the NBA. But the thing with him is that he's not marketable the way a Steph Curry or a LeBron was marketable. He's not marketable in the same way Anthony Edwards is marketable. He's a better player than Anthony Edwards, but Anthony Edwards is more entertaining to watch. SGA he knows how to win, but he's not as much fun. He's not as good for the entertainment product as somebody like Anthony Edwards.
Well, why do you think they're so focused on the national games and the NBA? Because they want to get their biggest stars out into those games. Why do you think the TNT games were always the big star matchups? That was on purpose. That wasn't an accident. Let's just be real about that.
It's like that in every sport.
No, but I'm saying the NBA was way more focused on what the national games were than any other sport.
They should have. That's what they should have done. It's the smart move.
I'm just saying, like when you saw Golden State and then you saw Durant move for the first time, you didn't think they wanted Golden State versus Brooklyn like a few times, and that they did that on purpose, obviously.
Of course they did, and also like to me, it's just like I think that look, a few years not long ago, basketball, the NBA was more about getting a whole bunch of stars to play together.
That's true.
Now the NBA is looking more and more like college football.
You mean a little more variety?
No, in the sense that there's a lot more, like, you have to, like, work harder to construct rosters. It takes a little bit more effort from the point of the GMs or, like, in college football's case, recruiting and things like that. And given the new CBA, teams are going to have to change their rosters a lot more often. Like in college football, you change your roster all the time.
But I don't see why that's a bad thing. I think that if you look at the big three, which everyone talks about, like, all right, so the Celtics were a big three. They won. Miami had a big three. That was probably, if you want to use an example, I would use the Miami big three over any other big three. If you want to talk about with LeBron and Wade and Bosh, even though I don't count Bosh really as a big three.
It wasn't really a big three. It was really more of a big two.
Right.
And even big two, I mean, Wade didn't stay healthy.
Yeah, but Wade was a big deal. Like, I compare Wade to what Steph Curry did in Golden State. He was the leader of the team, as always, and that's a big deal in that regard. But when you look now, you're seeing a lot of duos. That's the big thing that they're trying to do with teams. And I don't know. I mean, I don't want to go into it yet because we're not at that topic, but I can talk about that with the next person.
With Kevin Durant?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Here's what I'll say about the new CBA. I just think that the proof is kind of in the pudding in the sense of whether or not it's good for the league. I mean, this was a good matchup. It went 7 games, and there's not much buzz about it. There just really wasn't that much buzz relative to what there should have been. And that has a lot to do with the CBA. Now, in fairness, some of this stuff is unavoidable. Like your star players get old, they retire. I mean, that's what happened with Michael Jordan when he retired. Retired the second time.
Yeah.
And it was an era of like where Shaq was the best player in the league, and Shaq and Duncan were the best players, and there were a whole lot of like scoring point guards like Iverson and Francis and Marbury and guys like that. And, I guess you could argue that was a tough transition for the league. And that realistically will likely happen in any of these leagues. It is just a little bit unavoidable. Baseball can't do anything about the fact that the game is slow. Like, you can speed up the game a little bit, but baseball's always going to be the slowest sport, and that's not going to be good with like this with the younger generation where they get everything instantly. But like the generation of kids on cell phones and text messages, and you get everything back in an instant gratification. That's not good for baseball. So there's just some things that there's nothing they can do about.
Well, you could say the same thing about media, though, like because like they're constantly like SportsCenter doesn't work anymore because people don't, excuse me, want to see highlights because, excuse me, they're so used to like scrolling through TikTok or Instagram and Twitter to see clips. Oh, wait, I can go see a 10, 15, 20-second clip on my phone. What do I need SportsCenter for anymore?
Yeah, SportsCenter's not nearly as useful as it was. And you could go on YouTube, look up the highlights for whatever it is that you want. You turn on SportsCenter, they're showing you something, but you're not even picking it. You're just picking SportsCenter. You don't know what highlights you're going to see when you turn it on.
I mean, heck, they put SportsCenter on Disney Plus now because they're doing a different version for the younger people of today. That's how desperate they are for an audience.
Yeah. But I mean, but again, there's nothing you can do about that. It's just like that's just how the times
evolve.
Change. Yeah. And I guess ESPN does a good job. I mean, honestly, I do think they do a pretty good job trying to evolve.
I mean,
like they do have podcasts and things like that, which are much more popular now.
I don't like the new platform that they put together, but
which one?
That new digital streaming platform that they built to put a bunch of exclusive stuff on it, like Rich Eisen, that whole thing was being talked about. Like his show's going to move to ESPN Plus.
ESPN Plus. I mean, I guess you could argue. I think ESPN Plus was more for like cable cutters,
which is what everybody's talking about. I mean, we could talk about this topic on a different episode, but with the NFL Network reportedly being rumored to be bought by ESPN and Red Zone's now going to be on ESPN Plus. I mean, just think about that in itself. It's going to change the whole watching experience. Or the NBA Finals, or I'll give you one that's wild: the Super Bowl. We've heard rumors forever that they want to put the Super Bowl behind a paywall.
I think they will one day.
I just don't see that happening. It's the most watched sport. It's the most watched event in the world.
Well, it feels foreign now, but don't you think it really is? That's what they do with like UFC and wrestling events. Don't you think that like it wouldn't be that crazy if a bunch of your friends chipped in a little bit of money to watch the Super Bowl on pay-per-view? That's basically the same thing as chipping in money to buy snacks and drinks.
I guess, but I just don't. First of all, they would lose a ton of audience if they put it behind a paywall.
Maybe you're right, and maybe that's why they haven't done it. I just don't think it sounds that foreign of an idea to me.
I'll give you another example, and this is more of a radio nerdy example, but when Howard Stern was on regular terrestrial radio, he had 20 million listeners a week.
Yep.
When he went to satellite, that dropped under 1 million a week. I mean that seriously, because people didn't want to pay.
But did he make more money?
Well, he made more money just because they were desperate to bring over a big hot talent. But do you really think 20 million people were going to pay to listen to Howard on satellite? No. So you got to think about when you put things behind a paywall. Now, the event we're talking about is a phenomenon, so that's a different.
Well, but here's the thing, though. Here's one thing, though, that would make the Super Bowl less likely to be behind a paywall, which is that they make a fortune off of the commercials.
That's
so
why it'll
never
be
have
behind a
commercials
paywall.
if it's behind the paywall.
It'll never be behind a paywall because they will never give up the commercial revenue.
Yeah,
that
probably
comes
not. I feel
because
like the commercial revenue would be too much.
Because if that's the case, if they go to a paywall model, then they should just go on Amazon.
Right.
If that's the case. Or on Peacock or a Plus platform if they're going to do that. So I don't know. It'll never end up behind a paywall, though.
But yeah, the point I'm making, though, is just that there just wasn't. What was I saying? There just wasn't much buzz around this finals, and I don't think that, like I said, I don't necessarily think that's unrelated to the new CBA. Now, in fairness, the old way things can go wrong too, which is that you have one team that just totally dominates. But I think it could also go. Things can also go wrong with this new type of format, with like building teams from scratch and being more GM dominated. And I think that could also be an issue.
I mean, the last example I'll give, because Sam Presti was a really good. I don't like him because he's a little cocky as a GM, even though he's good. But I would look at Danny Ainge, who was with the Celtics for many years, now runs the Jazz.
Yeah.
And the amount of draft picks that Utah has is like through the roof. So eventually it's going to turn around because they have enough draft picks. Something's got to hit eventually with all the draft picks. You've said this all the time. Something's got to hit.
Something, yeah. And you never know, though, with new draft picks. It's just
That's true.
You never know how they're going to end up. But it seems to be a pretty, well, most of this team was outside of Holmgren, like their starting five was mostly not drafted. They drafted Dort, I think.
They drafted Dort.
And they drafted Holmgren, but they didn't draft J-Dub or Shea.
That was all part of that trade. Yeah. Which is crazy to think about.
Moving the goalposts is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, rubbing your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. So I do want to talk about Kevin Durant to the Rockets. In this blockbuster deal, what did the Rockets give up? They gave up.
I have the
They
deal.
gave up Jalen Green,
Dylan Brooks. It wasn't much. I mean, it was a bunch of first-round picks were involved in the deal. I think 5 of them. Let me see if I can find it while we're talking. I found it. Okay. So the Suns obviously traded Durant to Houston for Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, the number 10 overall pick in this upcoming draft, and 5 second-round picks.
That's a good deal for the Rockets.
Oh, of course it's a good deal for the Rockets.
Very good deal for the Rockets.
I mean, I think the Rockets hit a home run, knowing that they didn't have to trade Şengün as part of the deal.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the Suns were thinking. Now, I think Kevin Durant played his hand multiple times, saying he either wanted to go to the Spurs or he wanted to go to the Rockets. So basically, the Rockets and Spurs could just be like, okay, we'll just sit back until the deal comes down.
Well, maybe he could have gone to the. I don't know if he told them he didn't want to go to the Knicks, but I saw a report that the Knicks didn't want him.
They didn't want him. Yeah, and Miami was actually on the top of the list. They were not willing to give up enough to get him.
I mean, I understand the Knicks maybe not wanting to give up what they would have been willing, what they had to give up, but I don't think. But given what the Rockets just got for him, I don't think they would have had to give up that much.
The problem is, would a Karl Anthony Towns, a KD, and a Jalen Brunson really work well together? That's the issue.
I mean, I think it would work better than the current roster now.
I mean, and this was a decent roster. I mean, and they fired their best coach, but
yeah, they fired their. I mean, that's also kind of unrelated to it, but like, okay, their roster. If they were able to keep Towns, I would want Durant. I would not trade Towns for Durant, but if we could get Durant and maybe give up Bridges or something like that, or Josh Hart, absolutely, I would take it. Absolutely.
I mean, that's fine. Looking at it from the Rockets standpoint, I don't get how this makes you better. And because you have a guy who has a large ego and can't handle being the leader of a franchise. We saw it with the Nets, could not do it at all.
Well, that really wasn't Durant's fault. That had way more to do with Kyrie and Harden than Durant. I mean, first of all, Harden was injured for much of that time, and Kyrie was absent.
But Durant wanted to be there, though. That was his team. That's where he wanted to go.
Yeah, Durant. Okay, the worst thing, though, you can say, though, is that Durant picked the wrong teammates, in a sense.
Picked the wrong coach, too.
That too, but that's not the same thing as it really being his fault. I mean, he played really, really well in that series against the Bucks, but he effectively had nobody. Harden basically didn't play. He was injured for most of that series. So I don't know how you can blame all that went wrong with the Nets totally on Durant.
I'm just tired of this guy getting all the power and just continuing to be traded.
Because he's a Hall of Famer. That's why.
I'm not debating that he's a Hall of Famer. The issue I'm having is stop giving this guy power. He can't handle it. He can't be a number one. He just can't be.
But he can be a number one. He has won twice as a number one. I mean, I'm not saying I think he's going to win on the Rockets, but the Rockets are way better now than they were last year. I mean, last year, okay, look at what they did. They were the number 2 seed. They were built to be a good regular season team. They were not a good playoff team. And what happened with Jalen Green? He just didn't show up in big spots.
I don't think they gave Jalen Green enough time to really develop, to be quite honest.
That's true, but maybe perhaps that's true. I mean, he's 23, 24 years old. He's very young. But I think they want to win now. And I think I think they have a much better shot with Durant than Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks. I mean, like, I'm not the biggest Durant fan, but like, I think this is probably a smart move.
I mean,
you were just saying that they got him for not that it was a steal.
No, I said it. Of course it was a steal because, again, I think the Nets got a much better deal trading him to Phoenix than Phoenix got. Yeah. Because they got a bunch of first-round picks. They got Mikal Bridges at the time in that deal. Like, they made out like bandits on top of it. So they got a good deal. I don't know what Phoenix was thinking. They got nothing, really, in this deal. Like, Jalen Green could be a good player, but that's not your cornerstone for trading someone like Kevin Durant. That's the issue I have.
That's why the Rockets agreed to it.
Well, yes. Dylan Brooks is a nobody.
Here's the thing, though. This just proves my point that, like, the Knicks probably, given what the Rockets gave up, maybe the Knicks, if they were interested, could have gotten Durant and still been able to keep Towns. I'm not saying that's definitely the case. I'm just saying it's possible.
I mean, the salaries would have been the issue, so they probably would have had to trade him to match salary. But
maybe I'm not 100% certain what would have happened. But
the question I have for you is, because they were a second overall seed. Does this make them a first overall seed, and do they win 2 rounds with Kevin Durant?
That just depends on the luck of the draw.
No, but everyone is out there, including Stephen A. is like, oh my God, this is an amazing trade, and they're going to be this, and that. How do you know?
We don't know. Well, look, they might end up with a worse record, but I'm a little bit more concerned about what they do in the playoffs than just the regular season.
So if they flame out in the first round with Kevin Durant, is that trade a failure?
I wouldn't say the trade is a failure yet exactly because they don't have him for 1 year, but like it would be a disappointment.
I think flaming out in the first round would be a huge disaster considering what they gave up.
It would probably be a huge disappointment, but a lot of it really just it's hard to say though. It's hard to say because like what if I would say yeah, probably, but they didn't give up that much anyway.
And the other issue I have is so I was at the Fanatics event in the city over the weekend, and he was doing his because he has his company, The Boardroom, and he's there. He was being interviewed by Taylor Rooks, and all of a sudden, people are screaming in the crowd, "You just got traded to the Rockets!"
And he didn't know.
He claims he doesn't know. Are we really going to play the game that he didn't know he was being traded to the Rockets?
No, I don't believe that. His agent probably. I'm sure he has an agent that told him.
He can decide where he wants to go. It was so funny just watching him act like coy that he didn't know.
I guess it makes a little bit of sense. Do you think it would have been weirder if he had just been like, yeah, I know.
I think they purposely waited, knowing that he was going to be on a big stage in New York City. They purposely waited so everyone would snap a picture. And
he basically handpicks all the places that he gets traded.
Exactly. That LeBron did too.
Yeah, I guess it's just a thing with stars is that they just. It's not true. It's just true of Durant. It's true of everybody.
But I'm saying, like, when they did the whole LeBron nonsense, when all the teams walked in to make their pitches, did anyone really think that he was going anywhere besides Miami?
No, probably not.
It was the dumbest thing. Like the Knicks walked in, the Nets walked in, the Lakers walked in at the time. He was going to go play with Wade. I mean, that was the most obvious thing.
Yeah. I guess you could say we all kind of knew that. But yes, I will say I agree that if they flame out in the first round, it's probably a very big disaster, a big disappointment. But you know what? I mean, there's always a possibility that something like that happens after any big trade. You just,
I mean, they'll sell jerseys. I'll give you that.
I mean, look at what happened with the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, that roster was good enough to win multiple championships. They just kind of had bad luck. That was really all it was.
Well, and also Kyrie Irving not willing to follow the rules either.
Well, it was Kyrie Irving, and like the vaccine thing was just the thing at the time. At the time, Kyrie Irving he's not as crazy now, but at the time he was really crazy. And he often disappeared for reasons that were just sort of inexplicable. And it had a lot to do with James Harden not being healthy and also being a diva. But here's the thing: that team could have won multiple championships. They were good enough.
I'm not debating that, but those guys rarely played together.
Yeah, exactly. If they had actually played together, they would have won championships.
I mean, it's tough to make that statement, but I would say they definitely would have been like uberly competitive for sure.
Yeah, they probably would have been able to. I mean, maybe even if Durant's foot was a little smaller, who knows?
You're talking about the 3 centimeter difference.
Maybe they would have beaten Chris Paul and the Suns that year.
That would have been tough, but
I think it would have been attainable.
It would have been obtainable. I'm just saying it would have been tough.
Yeah, we don't know, but it's possible is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of what the Knicks will do this offseason, I think they're going to be way worse. They're going to be way worse.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I mean, it looks more and more likely. First of all, Durant's off the table. And it looks less and less likely that they're going to get Giannis. And I've said many times Durant was more likely than Giannis. It seems way less likely now that the Knicks are going to be able to get Giannis. And they're certainly going to be be getting a worse head coach than Tom Thibodeau. I mean, I saw that they interviewed Mike Brown. So then you effectively just fire Tom Thibodeau just to hire Mike Brown. Are you kidding me?
I heard a funny rumor that like they almost want to try and go back to Thibodeau and say, "Would you come back?"
Nobody does that.
It would be funny if they actually did. Hey, sorry, we didn't mean it.
I mean, they still have to pay him.
Well, yeah, obviously, but that would be funny if they had to give him a new deal on top of it. Just say, "Hey, we didn't mean it. Just come back.
Yeah,
we'll pay you again."
So I don't know what they're going to do this offseason, but I have a feeling it's going to be a disappointment. It looks more and more likely that Josh Hart's going to get traded.
Probably.
But I don't know for what. They're going to need a little bit more depth on their bench.
Yeah, they need a lot of depth. That's a massive issue that they have to get to the bottom of because they kind of got lucky that they were able to go to some of those guys. That team would not last in most series. Let's just be real.
No, that was the issue. But also get another star, But that's not an easy thing to do. There's only so many stars.
That's not the James Dolan approach.
Well, the good news is that James Dolan's not actually running things.
Well, that's a good point. That's true. You're right.
That's one good thing about it. So I don't really have a whole lot of hope. I do want to talk a little bit about this. Rachel DeMita got fired. Did I spell the name wrong? I think I spelled the name wrong. There's no I in there.
There's no I. The first I.
I didn't mean to type I.
That's okay.
Yeah. Because that was definitely I typed that by accident. So
that's okay.
She got fired. She's doing the WNBA. She's
Big Three
announcer. I never heard of her.
I've heard of her a little bit. She's an influencer that's kind of doing like a half-hacky sideline job for the Big Three.
Yeah.
Which is Ice Cube's league. Now, the reason she got fired is kind of ridiculous, if you ask me. I don't know how much you know. Do you know a lot about it?
I know a little. She
tweeted out Caitlin Clark clips. And I guess it was when she was working. I don't know what they classify as working, if she's an influencer on a sideline making clips. But I guess, I don't know if you remember when Caitlin Clark was coming out of the draft, Ice Cube and the Big Three tried to convince her to sign with the Big Three, and they were going to pay her like $5 to $10 million to go there. And she basically turned it down and said, "Hey, I want to develop in the WNBA," which probably was a smarter choice at the time, even though they don't get paid a whole lot. But she makes enough in endorsements that it doesn't really matter. So basically, she posted highlights of Caitlin Clark while working. And Ice Cube and the Big Three said, "No, you're not doing that. You're fired." And I was just like, "Really?" It's her own pages.
I guess you could say it might seem a little much to fire her. So it's while she was working, like while she was supposed to be working.
So it says the stated reason for her abrupt departure was a video she posted on X highlighting Caitlin Clark while she was actively working a Big 3 game. According to Front Office Sports, that was the final straw.
Oh, so it sounds like a lot of things happened.
Yeah, but that's the one you choose to fire her over?
But don't you think it could be like the straw that broke the camel's back? Maybe they talked to her about these things multiple times, and then finally they were like, this is enough.
But that's the one you choose?
But I mean, what I'm saying is that it's like the straw that broke the camel's back thing. Like if this was her only infraction, they wouldn't have fired her. But if she had multiple infractions, well, that makes it a lot worse.
I get it, but that's a weird one to fire somebody over. Like,
I mean,
it's
look,
she didn't kill somebody, she didn't assault somebody, I don't know, she didn't say the N-word, she didn't say.
I mean, those are pretty extreme things.
No, but
it
the
takes
point
way less to fire somebody than those things.
No, but the point I'm trying to make is you fired her for posting a clip of a WNBA player. That could be suable in court.
I mean, maybe. I mean, you never know with our legal system. But the point I'm making, though, it sounds like they didn't fire her just for this. It sounds like it was a multitude, possibly from their side at least, multiple things that happened. And this was just one of many minor infractions, like death by like 1,000 cuts, as they say.
So it says so this was a quote because she actually read the termination letter that she got from the Big 3. Has come to the Big 3's attention that Miss DeMita was posting on her social media platforms during this past weekend's Big 3 games and promoting the competing New York Liberty versus Indiana Fever WNBA game that was being broadcast at the same time. The league is extremely dismayed and disappointed by Miss DeMita's severe lapse in judgment while performing services for the league, during which time she should have been reasonably known that she should have been promoting only league games. Are we really going to get into a tit-for-tat situation when it comes to what you're allowed to post on your own social media?
That is slight. I do agree that is slightly dicey territory. I would say, because like, what if somebody who works at ESPN posts a highlight of a football game that's shown on Fox?
But like, that's like saying, because of what they said, she posted a clip of a competing league. First of all, I don't see the Big 3 being a competitor of the WNBA. I think that's a ridiculous statement. They're not the same thing.
Well, they're both basketball.
They are, but one is a league, one is a 3-on-3 tournament thing.
But the Big 3 is not just women, right?
It's not, but they're two completely different forms of the game, I guess, is the way I would say it.
I guess you could argue that they're competitors. I don't know. I guess you could I guess they're. Would you say Fox Sports and ESPN are competitors?
Yes, absolutely. Not even close.
I guess I see your point that they're not really competitors in the sense that it's totally different. I guess that the Big 3 views the WNBA as a competitor.
That's kind of a crazy thought. Like, that's like the WNBA and Unrivaled, because Unrivaled is taking some of the WNBA players and paying, and they started their own league. So I see that as a direct competitor to the WNBA because they're stealing players from it. But
well, I guess that's how the Big 3 feels, which is that they have WNBA players.
I know, but the way that they're saying, because she posted on her social media a clip of Caitlin Clark, like that.
Do you think it's possible? Do you think it's possible that if it wasn't while she was working, it wouldn't have mattered?
But how can they prove? I guess they could look at the timestamps if she was working. But there are people who schedule clips.
That's true.
On social media. So what happens if you did it at this time, but it's scheduled out at another time? Like, it's apples and oranges. Like, you're picking a battle for no reason.
Yeah, I don't know what it. I also, the other thing that we have to think about is, what did it say in her contract? Was it like made very clear in her contract you can't post anything that is you can't post any highlights on your social media from the WNBA or anything like that?
But what's the difference between just you making a post of a clip and retweeting it?
Nothing.
So would she gotten in trouble if she retweeted a clip of Caitlin Clark, or would they have said, "Oh, because you were just retweeting, that's sharing something you not
I actually
posting
think they likely would have done the same thing.
Which is even more ridiculous, if you ask me.
To be honest, that's probably what they would have done.
Because I see ESPN personalities retweet like an amazing college football clip from Fox. Or
yeah, that is true. So I guess it is sort of dicey territory. Maybe a league like the Big Three is a little more like sensitive to that than say ESPN.
We live in an influencer culture where there's really no more what's the term I'm looking for? Competitor, like where it used to be like if you were ESPN, that's a no sharing anything from Fox because that's our competitor. We live in a digital influencing culture where that really does not exist anymore.
Yeah.
So this is dumb. If she did other things, which is what they're claiming, and they were serious things, that's a whole different issue in itself. But they're saying like it's very like it's not, they don't have the information on it. So I don't know. I think they overreached on this one.
Yeah. Look, I just don't. All I'm going to say about this is I just don't know all of the details about this, and what contract she may have signed or what the details were with that.
I love this also because it says the league provided her with unique access and opportunity to be a focal point on a national broadcast. So management was completely taken back to learn that she was posting about another leagues while in the midst of rendering services. I mean, national broadcast. Why? Because your games are on FS1? Like, FS1 is like the lowest of the low.
Yeah.
When it comes to national broadcast. Like, Fox, ESPN, NBC, CBS, those are national broadcasts to me.
Nickelodeon.
Yes. Thank you, Chris Russo.
All right.
Yeah.
That's our show this week. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Nick Morgasen. I'll be back next week. So see you guys then.